Hi and welcome. My name is Suzanne Hume and I'm the director for cleanearthforkids.org, a nonprofit. Thank you so much for being with us. Tonight we'll hear from our wonderful youth board and interns, important information. So excited you can join us. I'd like to start by introducing Janice.
Yes, thank you, Suzanne. Hi, my name is Janice, and I'm on Team 4, #WatersLife. If you are a student watching this, you can earn community service by writing 2 pages of notes and a short summary of what you learned. More information can be found at cleanearthforkids.org. At Clean Earth for Kids, we have 6 teams, and social, racial, climate, and environmental justice are all a part of what we do. If you go to our contest page at cleanearthforkids.org, you will see a variety of contests like art, music, writing, poetry, dance, STEM projects, infographics, presentations, and more. We have many K-12 contests and challenges for everyone to take part in. If you'd like to write poetry, we have a contest for you. K-12 students are welcome to enter our contests. And we also honor community members who draw and decorate a picture of a hand with symbols, words, and pictures to honor their work. Judith has a special shout out for our friends, 2 amazing people, Kathleen McCoy and Jay Koffenstein. Can you please introduce yourself and tell us why you selected these 2 people?
Thank you, Janice. Yes, hello, I am Judith with Team 3, where we focus on clean air because kids breathe here. I selected these 2 people because they have given us so much help, inspiration, knowledge, and guidance. I drew a hand to describe Caitlin's dedication to her work to stop climate change and protect the environment. Caitlin is a staff attorney with the Harvard University Environmental and Energy Law program, and she works incredibly hard to provide information about the environmental rollbacks or cuts of protection. We are proud to call Caitlin a friend and a role model. I also drew a hand for Jay Koffenstein, our board member who has worked for decades as a teacher and an environmental protection leader. Jay has taught so many about climate action, green buildings, gardening, protecting pollinators, and wildlife. And he's been so incredibly supportive to the youth board and interns and the board. Jay, we appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Catlin and Jay. Thank you to environmental justice heroes and all that you have protected our air, our water, and public lands, wildlife. It means so much. Judith, can you tell us about our no idling contests?
Yes, our K-12 students can enter our no idling sign contests and create children's art to remind drivers to turn off their engines when they are parked. Did you know that 1 minute of idling has more carbon monoxide than 3 packs of cigarettes? When you're parked or are waiting for the stoplight to turn green, please turn off your engine because it makes a huge difference. You can pass a no idling resolution at your campus. We have examples, a resource packet, and information on the Team 3 page on our website, cleanearthforkids.org. We are challenging university campuses and cities to put up signs. Please contact us. Tonight, we will be talking about clean air and actions you can take. Now, I will introduce Jillian.
Hi, thank you so much, Judith. So my name's Jillian. I work on Teams 3 and Teams 5. So we're here to discuss what is air pollution. Air pollution is a mix of particulate matter and gases that can be very dangerous to our health. Now, particulate matter is a combination of really small particles and liquid droplets, and this combination can be very harmful because it can include things like acids, such as nitrate and sulfates, organic chemicals, metals, soil, and dust. Some of these combinations can be really, really small, as seen as particulate matter, it's labeled 2.5, versus some of them can be seen with the human eye, think smog or smoke. And that brings us to the Air Quality Index, or the AQI, which measures 5 major pollutants that we regulate in the US, including particulate matter. The lower the number on the Air Quality Index, the better the air quality is. Now, the air from where I'm from on the Air Quality Index is at an 11, which is great quality. The air quality in Oceanside right now is at a 56, which is not great, but it's not horrible either. But groups that are susceptible should definitely limit their outside activity. And it's also been very hot in California, which can make the particulate matter worse, which is why air quality is worse. However, places that are currently suffering from the wildfires have some of the worst air quality. For example, Weaverville has an air quality level of 202 on the Air Quality Index. And the reason why is because wood smoke is so dangerous. It is up to 12 times worse than cigarette smoke is. And smoke, like we said, is a mixture of gases and particulate matter. And over 90% of the wood smoke particulate matter is smaller than 1 micron. And basically what that means is it's super small and can travel farther in the lungs, which makes it more dangerous to breathe in. The biggest health threat from smoke being those very small particles. And you can use apps on your phone to measure the air quality in your area if you're worried about it. I use the app Air Bubbles on my phone to check my air quality. And you definitely should download it if you have the opportunity, because it can help keep you safe in some unfortunate situations. And it's also important to keep air quality in your house too. Use air filters, keep your windows open and your doors open if the air quality is good outside, and if not, of course, use an air filter. And air pollution specifically impacts certain demographics, so make sure to do your research on whether or not you'll be impacted by poor air quality.
USC has already started and already has completed important longitudinal air pollution studies. And in this study, as you'll see on the screen, this research study focused on the effects of air pollution and expectant mothers. And you can see the horrible, horrible effects of air pollution on expectant mothers. And in upcoming weeks, we'll talk more about things that we can do, because that's why we're here, right? We're here to stand up against the Trump administration rollbacks and figure out the things that we can do in our local communities. As you've seen, Jillian shared the effects, the bad effects of wood smoke on air quality. And this is something that most people don't know. So our job tonight, as always, is to try to sort out the information, get you the facts, and work as hard as we can, collaborate with others, and make a difference. So thank you so much. So after Courtney was speaking, so I'm going to pass this over to John Williams.
Hi, thank you so much, Suzanne. Today I'm going to be giving you all some background on a very important concept called social costs. So it's a bit of a complex concept, but I think you guys can all understand it. So as you guys probably know, like any company, polluter companies such as coal-powered energy plants have to pay a lot of costs to run their business, like pay the wages of their workers, pay for the land, pay for their running water, and many other things. What's interesting, though, is that polluting companies often don't have to pay for the cost of their pollution. This doesn't really make sense because, for most companies and people, you have to pay, for example, the trash company to pick up your trash, either directly or through taxes. But with polluting companies, their waste is a lot harder to manage than just, measuring your trash and like hiring the trash company. For example, if someone breathes in toxic fumes next to a power plant and then has to go to the hospital because they're sick, they will need to pay a huge medical bill. Even though the polluting companies should have to pay for instances like this because they caused it, they actually don't have to pay for it. And this is what's called a social cost, because although it's not a direct cost, the polluting company is causing this cost for society. Trump's actually making it so, believe it or not, so these companies have less and less responsibility to pay for these social costs. For example, if you go to the New York Times article on the front page of our website with the 100 rollbacks, you can see that Trump has actually told agencies to stop using the calculation of the social cost of carbon. And this is really important because although coal power plants may be profitable without having to pay these social costs, when you consider the costs like the medical bills and stuff like that, these companies may not be a better alternative than other things like, solar energy or stuff like that. And if they actually had to calculate these costs, that would really drive, more importance of things such as solar energy, wind energy, and stuff like that. So here's what you can do to learn more about this. You can look at rollback 14, and then you can go look at all the other rollbacks. You can also read more about social costs and why they're so important to calculate and why Trump has chosen not to calculate them. Yep, so another thing you can do to support renewable energy, such as solar panels and wind energy, is encouraging universities and organizations to divest their money from fossil fuels. So basically this means that instead of investing in companies like ExxonMobil, universities might instead invest in companies like Tesla or, solar panel companies. So for example, the university I go to, Georgetown University, has already committed to divesting from fossil fuels. So now Georgetown can put that money to, make companies like Tesla with electric cars or make solar panels more efficient. This is a really important concept, divestment. And we at Clean Earth for Kids here continue to work to make every university in the United States divest. It's really one of our passions, and we really think it can change the world. So yeah, thank you for that. And now I'll pass it off to Leanne.
Thank you, John. So like he was saying, divestment is really important. The University of California system has already divested from fossil fuels. And to just think more about how you can divest further from fossil fuels, there's also a thing called fossil fuel banking. So there's a lot of banks that have a lot of fossil fuel money in them, like Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, so much more. So that we talked about that in a few panel discussions before. But just a quick reminder of another way that you can divest if you're a bit older and you do have a checking account or a savings account at a bank. So speaking of like fossil fuels, they kind of they influence our air quality as well. And so we're talking a lot about air quality and rollbacks. So policies make a difference. And these 100 rollbacks are reversing a lot of policies. They're undoing these environmental policies that protect us. So a way to stay informed is to use trackers like the Harvard Tracker and the Columbia Tracker that are on our website at cleanforkids.org. These trackers help us know about the rollbacks, what's going on with them, and how we can help if there's a public comment or if there's any more information to kind of keep us more informed. And being informed means that we're able to speak out about these. So learn all you can about these rollbacks, and then you can think about what infographics can I make? How can I educate my friends and family? Do I do slides and video clips, or do I talk to them one-on-one? It's a great way to educate yourself and so forth. So the first rollback I want to talk to everyone today is rollback number 17. Rollback number 17 repealed this requirement that state and regional authorities track tailpipe emissions from vehicles on federal highways. So this sounds like a mouthful at first, but it goes back to this measure called the greenhouse gas measure. So greenhouse gases include things like CO2, and they trap heat within our atmosphere, so causing our planet to warm. So these gases are not good for our planet, and they're not good for our health either. They can influence a lot of health problems in regards to our lungs. So this greenhouse gas measure that was finalized in 2017, and it was made so that state departments could track changes in tailpipe emissions from cars. So cars release CO2, this is a greenhouse gas emission, so the state would have to track those and make sure that they can try and reduce this as possible, set these targets to how they're going to do it, and make sure they keep reports on how much is going into the air, so that way they can try to best reduce these greenhouse gases, because they're not good for us and not good for our planet. However, this measure was repealed or canceled when this rollback occurred, and so now we don't have those those requirements for states to track these emissions, which is really dangerous because it means this can get out of hands. We're going to get more smog, we're going to get more air pollution, and it's not good for the health of us or the health of our planet. So that's really dangerous, and it already has been rolled back. However, there is some hope in the next rollback, which is rollback number 2, which rollback number 2 and 1 are posted on our YouTube channel, Clean for Kids. I talked about it a little bit, and I talked with Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali, a former EPA member. We talked a little bit more about it and what it means, and states are doing. Say we back number 2, this rollback of administration, because rollback number 2 revoked California's power to set stricter tailpipe emission standards in the federal government. So because of this thing called the Clean Air Act, the California previous to that had set a standard for themselves on how they're going to limit these emissions coming from cars, from the tailpipes of cars. However, that power was revoked with this, because this power was given to them after the Clean Air Act was established. And they were like, well, you already had your standards. It's okay. You can keep your standards. And these standards are much higher than the federal government standards. California is, a very climate active, and climate friendly state in terms of policy. So this was great. Other states could follow their lead if they wanted to, but this rollback unfortunately revoked that power and made sure that they have to only set them to the federal government and not their own standards. And the federal government standards allow for more pollution to occur, more CO2 to get out in the air, which isn't good. But like I said earlier, 22 states are suing both the EPA and the Trump administration. So we will watch that closely and see what happens. And hopefully this power can be granted to them again. And then last we have rollback number 1, which weakened greenhouse gas standards for passenger cars and light trucks. Another heavy or kind of thing idea to kind of look at. However, much more quickly, there was this rule called the SAFE rule, which isn't safe at all, which was supposed to make things more safer and affordable and more efficient in relation to cars. However, this rule replaced an old, more climate-friendly rule. This old rule is similar to rollback number 17, how I mentioned, how it required departments to track how much greenhouse gases were being out. However, the SAFE rule that replaced it does not do that. And so again, this continues the cycle of climate change as more CO2 comes out and the more heat gets trapped in, and it's not good, like I said, for our environment or our own personal health. And so it's important that we track these rollbacks and make sure that this stuff doesn't happen again, because it's not healthy for the air and it's not healthy for our planet. And so as I talk about all these rollbacks, you kind of think, what can I do? What can I do to stop these things? So we do have a challenge for that. It's called the Call It Out Challenge. And Judith did a great job at calling out Andrew Wheeler, a co-lobbyist, because of the Mercury and or the MATS rollback, which is Mercury, which is included in this, is a neurotoxin. So Judith, could you please tell us more about MATS, or the Mercury and Air Toxic Standard rollback, and why we are so strongly opposed to this rollback by the Trump administration?
Yes, thank you, Leanna. So as I've talked about before, mercury is a neurotoxin, a poison. The rollback of MATS, Mercury and Air Toxic Standards, is devastating. Coal plants release harmful chemicals like mercury, lead, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen dioxide, and carbon dioxide into the air. These toxins are linked to asthma attacks, heart problems, and other diseases. So mercury is really dangerous because it can actually affect the developing brains of children, where exposure can actually lead to permanent neurological damage, and loss of IQ. Without MATs, people will breathe in toxic air pollution from power plants, factories, busy highways, or airports. MATs is important because it protected children and communities from mercury and other air toxics coming from burning fossil fuels at power plants. In fact, MATs reduced mercury pollution by 81% and saved over 11,000 lives each year. This is why we need MATs. It's so heartbreaking that this rule was rolled back so coal companies could make more money.
That is so wrong. Is Rollback 12 also about coal?
Yes, it is. The EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, led by the former coal lobbyist Andrew Wheeler, created a new category for 3 small power plants that burn waste coal. This new category reduced the air pollution rules for these power plants. This lets them put out even more mercury and other toxic pollution into our air.
Wow. We have to let people know about these rollbacks so they can tell their congressmen and senators to put these rules back. So what about Rollback 7?
Rollback number 7 changed a section of the Clean Air Act, reducing limits on big industrial polluters. Before the rollback, once a facility was classified as a major polluter, it had to put in maximum achievable control technology, or MACT, M-A-C-T, in the power plant or factory to reduce air pollution. So MACT reduces air pollution. So, yeah.
What exactly did the rollback do?
With the rollback, these major polluters can turn off MACT, M-A-C-T. Okay, I'll just say that right now, for now. So these major polluters can turn off MACT in the power plant or factory, which is supposed to reduce air pollution. So once the pollution is below the amount set by the EPA, then they can just turn it off and shut it down. They are no longer required to reduce pollution. We must work to get this changed. Also, now the polluter is now only classified as an area polluter instead of a major polluter.
Can you give us more information about the maximum achievable control technology and what that means?
Yes, thank you. So it means that the same power plant or factory now has less regulation and monitoring. Without the maximum achievable control technology in the power plant or factory, the amount of pollution will go up, and that power plant or factory will no longer be protected and monitored.
That is so terrible. All these rollbacks just so wealthy corporations can make more money? It is so important that all of us learn about how the 100 rollbacks under the Trump administration are hurting our health and causing air pollution, water pollution, taking away our public lands, and all kinds of things that are not good. Judith, are rollbacks 8 and 9 related?
Yes, they are, Janice. Rollback number 8 and number 9 both involve weakening an important program called NSR, or New Source Review. So it is bad enough when a polluting company comes to town and builds a new factory, a power plant, a mill, like a paper mill or a steel mill, or even a plastic manufacturing plant, all releasing a huge amounts of deadly pollution into the air. But what makes it even worse is when that factory, power plant, mill, or plastic manufacturing plant does not even use filters and equipment that could reduce pollution, protect our air and water, and save thousands of lives. In the past, with NSR or New Source Review, when a new factory, power plant, and a major polluting building was being built or changed as a part of a building permit process, companies were required to have pollution controls like filters and the newest, most effective equipment to reduce pollution. These factories, power plants, and mills put deadly chemicals into our air, making children and people sick. The least they can do is try to protect people. These companies should be required to have and use things that reduce pollution. But now, with the Trump administration's repeated cuts, this rule is weakened and children and communities are exposed to even higher levels of toxic pollution. The New Source Review, NSR, protection was created in 1977 by the Clean Air Act. The Trump administration is taking away many important parts of the Clean Air Act, our foundational law that protects the air. The New Source Review is very important because it protects communities from toxic pollution.
What happened with the rollback?
The Trump administration cut the New Source Review 9 different times from December 2017 to March 2020. This really reduced the EPA's power to control pollution. Now there are more toxic pollutants across the country.
It's sad that now communities are not protected from increases in pollution when a new factory is built or an existing facility is charged or changed. The New Source Review requires pollution controls as required in the building permits, but because it has been so seriously weakened by the Trump administration taking away protections, people are not protected. Judith, what about Rollback 9? You talked about factories and power plants not being required to use the best filters and most effective equipment to reduce pollution. What about oil refineries? We know that oil refineries are major polluters and their pollution poisons the air, water, and land. Oil refineries are also allowed to not use the best equipment to help protect people, communities, our air, and water from these deadly chemicals.
Thank you for the question. Yes, rollback number 9 is about oil refineries. As you said, an oil refinery uses oil they drilled from the ground called crude oil and turns it into toxic chemicals benzene, kerosene, ethylene, propylene, and gasoline. So to answer your question, oil refineries also no longer have to help to protect people and communities. The Trump administration keeps weakening a regulation or rule called the New Source Review that protects people because it puts pollution controls on new or upgraded refineries. Benzene causes cancer. At least 19 refineries leaked harmful levels of benzene from January 2018 to February 2020. These refineries pollute the air and hurt the health of the people living nearby.
Benzene is so toxic. What did the EPA do to protect us?
In 2015, the EPA updated the petroleum refinery sector rule to reduce toxic air pollution by 5,200 tons every year and volatile organic compounds, or VOCs, by 50,000 tons per year. The rule included what's called fence line monitoring, so high levels of pollution could be detected earlier. The EPA estimated that the updated rule and monitoring would lower the cancer risk for more than 1.4 million people.
Wow, that is why these rules are so important. They save millions of lives. So, Judith, why would a rule that saves millions of lives be rolled back or taken away? It's so wrong.
Yes, I agree. So in January 2016, unfortunately, the American Petroleum Institute and the American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, who drill and burn the fossil fuels that are poisoning the air and water, asked the EPA to reconsider the rule. This is tragic. Sadly, despite the hard work of Earthjustice, the EPA rolled back parts of the refinery sector rule in November 2018. to save the industry $11.5 million. These companies are wealthy. The three biggest refining companies in the country, Marathon Petroleum, Valero Energy, and Phillips 66, made over $8 billion in profits last year. The Trump administration and big oil don't think reducing the cancer risk for 1.4 million people is worth 0.1% of those three companies' profits.
That is just not right. These rollbacks are so dangerous to our health. Judith, can you please tell us how these rollbacks relate to NEPA or National Environmental Policy Act?
Yes, so NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act, was passed in 1970. NEPA has been the cornerstone and foundational environmental law for the last 50 years and is being cut. NEPA looks to see if projects are damaging to water, air, and wildlife, and if so, the projects have to be designed and built so they are less harmful. Sometimes a NEPA review shows a project would be so harmful and damaging so that it is stopped. NEPA should be protecting communities from the pollution from refineries, power plants, and factories, but it's being rolled back. Without NEPA, we can't have racial, social, climate, and environmental justice because communities of color and low-income people won't be protected.
Thanks, Judith. Rollback 10 and 11 hurt the air in our national parks. Judith, can you tell us about the Haze rule?
Yes, thank you. So the amount of air pollution in our national parks is terrible. Air pollution is affecting 90% of our national parks. This blocks how far we can see. In fact, the distance people can see at our national parks is shorter by about 50 miles. Our national parks should be free of air pollution, but a rule that protected us and our parks was rolled back. This rule is called the Haze Rule. It's part of the Clean Air Act.
What does the Haze rule do?
The Haze Rule protects clean air, reduces air pollution, and improves the visibility, or how far we can see, in our national parks. But the Trump administration has rolled it back. Now, tons of pollution from the burning of fossil fuels like coal, oil, and natural gas is getting into our air. This air pollution irritates the nose, throat, and lungs, which can cause coughing, shortness of breath, or a tight feeling around the chest. We need the Haze Rule. Catherine, can you please tell us about yourself and how plants can filter the air?
Thank you, Judith, for the great information. Also, thank you to Janice for the good questions. The information you both shared is so important. Hi, I'm Catherine with Team 2. We work to protect what we love. The future of the environment relies on our actions today. I am here to give you some updates about what we will be sharing next week. Next week, we'll be talking more about how plants help filter the air and our water. Plants are so incredible. Unfortunately, we are losing many species of our plants. We will be talking about this and actions we can take next week in our panel discussion. We will also be shouting out an incredible woman who has planted an amazing number of trees. Trees are mandatory for our, Trees are mandatory for a clean future as they absorb pollution, carbon, and filter out water. Next week, we will also give you an update on the tawn grass forest. We oppose logging of the tawn grass as it will destroy protected land. Soil absorbs carbon. Please remember to check out Darwin's video clips for different age groups on YouTube. Next week, we will also be talking about regenerative agriculture. There's a movie on Netflix called Kiss the Ground that features singer-songwriter Jason Martez from Oceanside. The Public Lands movie called Public Trust is now available to watch for free on YouTube. This This movie honors the important work and culture of Native Americans. You will see Angelo and his tribe work to protect Bears Ear and the Grand Staircase National Monuments. I would now like to introduce Jonah.
Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a couple pieces of legislation that we have up that are going to potentially help us finally get toxic pesticides and chemicals off of our lands and keep them out of our water supplies. So starting out this discussion, there's this thing that I want to tell you about called pesticide drift, which is when someone sprays pesticides on one area of land, say it's like a field of some kind, and then that pesticide gets picked up by wind and floats into areas where it wasn't meant to be sprayed, whether that's a residential area or a school. And since a lot of these pesticides are highly toxic, when you breathe those in, that can cause really harmful health effects. So obviously that's a huge problem. Also, when pesticides seep into the ground, they can get into our water, which could cause similar health effects and when they're drank. So that's something that is a big problem. And moving on a little bit, I want to recap a little bit about a class of pesticides called neonicotinoids that are the most commonly used type of pesticide on Earth, and they harm bees and other pollinators by interfering with their navigation systems and their nervous systems because they're neurotoxins. They've been also shown to be a factor in colony collapse disorder, which is a trend among the beekeepers reported where they suddenly started losing their entire bee colonies. And we've seen that bee populations are very drastically down because of the use of these pesticides. And we depend so much on bees for our food, as well as for things like they're integral to our economic well-being and for certain medicines that require pollination. So it's really important that we phase out the use of these neonicotinoids and ban them altogether. In addition, neonicotinoids can have harmful effects on humans. They're potential endocrine disruptors. They can cause reproductive harm. They're carcinogens, and they can cause respiratory irritation when they're breathed in. And these health effects, combined with the effects that I already talked about on bees and other pollinators, have caused these pesticides to be banned by dozens of countries, including all of Europe. So it's something that we'd really like to see the U.S. to get behind a little more, and it's really disappointing that despite the international consensus that these things are really harmful, we have yet to take action against them. However, there is certain pieces of legislation up that could help us do that. And the first one is a bill to actually ban neonicotinoid pesticides called the Saving Our Pollinators Act. And we have a petition up on our website that where you can voice your support for this act. And as I already talked about a little bit, it's so important that we ban these neonicotinoid pesticides. In California, an action that you can take to help ban or restrict neonics is to write to the California Department of Pesticide Regulation. And before October 11th, if you write into them, that's a great way to make your voice heard and to help participate in this movement to get these pesticides out of our waters and stop them from harming California pollinators. Another class of pesticides that I want to talk to you about are called organophosphates. Now, these are chemically different from neonicotinoids, but they're still deeply, deeply harmful, and perhaps even more harmful to human health than neonicotinoid pesticides. In high levels, they can cause serious poisoning and even death when they're eaten, drunk, breathed in, or even touched. They're highly, highly toxic. But even in small instances of exposure, they can cause just little things like wooziness and memory gaps. And when you have people working on farms and are exposed to this, that can cause accidents when they're operating heavy machinery or things like that. And we've seen certain efforts to ban these as well. However, our president has shown that he's been willing to expand their use because of donations to his campaign. After $1 million donation from a company called Dow Chemical that helps make these organophosphate pesticides, he brought back chlorpyrifos, which is a type of very, very harmful organophosphate. But similarly to neonicotinoids, there are good politicians who are out there trying to get these pesticides off of our lands. And one bill to ban the organophosphate chlorpyrifos is Bill HR 230, which is proposed by Mike Levin, who we've interacted with in the past. Is a very nice guy, and he co-sponsored this bill. The pesticide chlorpyrifos is a neurotoxic pesticide, which means that it reduces IQ, causes attention disorders, and it delays motor development. So that's obviously something that we do not want sprayed on us. However, the EPA has decided to continue the use of chlorpyrifos, and that kind of went along with that donation that I talked about earlier from Dow Chemical. However, the European Union, California, New York, Oregon, and Hawaii have already banned this harmful pesticide. But obviously there's still a lot of work to be done because we don't want it to be sprayed anywhere. Another bill that bans 2 classes of neonicotinoids and organophosphates is PACTPA, which is Protect America's Children from Toxic Pesticides Act of 2020, from Senator Tom Udall of New Mexico. This bill bans all organophosphates and neonicotinoids, which both are neurotoxins, again, that harm our brains and can disorient bees and other pollinators. It also bans paraquat, of which 1 sip is lethal. So it's pretty unbelievable that we would spray something on our crops and in our lands that if you took 1 little sip of it, you would die. It closes certain loopholes that pesticide companies have used, and it suspends and reviews some pesticides deemed unsafe by countries like Canada and the EU, who we can tend to trust a little bit more to make wise decisions about these things. The European Union uses something called the precautionary principle, which is the idea that if there's even a risk of some adverse effect of a pesticide, they won't use it. Whereas we've tended to have the policy of we use it and then we deal with the consequences, which is obviously not the right approach. This bill would also prohibit the use of banned pesticides that have already been purchased in the past. And it would also have product labels in both English and Spanish, which is really important when you consider that a lot of the people using these pesticides and spraying them are farm workers who may have immigrated to the United States. And if they're not able to read the health effects on the labels of these pesticides, they might not really understand how dangerous they could be. Moving on a little bit, I want to mention briefly that we have the opportunity to voice our disapproval of the Keystone XL pipeline. And we know how harmful oil pipelines are to things like wetlands and clean water supplies. And this is a great way for you to express your disapproval. So you can call that number to leave a voicemail, or you can email that email there. And that has to be done by Tuesday, October 13th. Yeah, so submit your public comments by then. And thanks so much for listening. Suzanne?
Yes, thank you so much. I just wanted to give an update. So we called in to the Keystone XL pipeline meetings, and both nights, Monday and Tuesday, there were so many speakers calling in to oppose this horrible pipeline that takes the tar sands from Canada through our country. It is so dangerous to over 1,000 rivers, wetlands. Anyway, it's a really, really bad thing. And Janice has talked about this before. You've talked about this before, Jonah. We definitely need to oppose this pipeline and take action. But I was so impressed by the number of people calling in and the stories that they told, the reasons why this pipeline cannot go through. So it was incredible to watch Indigenous people working right along with farmers and ranchers who are so afraid that their lands will be taken by eminent domain. Because what happens is the pipeline companies try to use this thing called eminent domain, which means I can take away your land if it's for the public good. So a comment that we need to make is that no, this is not good. This is not helpful to the public. So this is not in the public's best interest. We must stop this pipeline. So yes, for sure. And thank you so much for all of your important work. Thank you to everyone. Leanna, I know that you would like to share or talk about a couple of things. And one is to get out the vote. So we've talked tonight about important policies, and we've seen the devastating consequences of what happens when you have an oil lobbyist in charge of our public lands and a coal lobbyist in charge of the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency. And when, for example, the Trump administration, Trump received a $1 million donation after allowing chlorpyrifos, and how damaging that is. So, and thankfully, as Jonah said, chlorpyrifos is banned now in Hawaii, California, and New York, but we have 47 states that are allowing this organophosphate. So we need to get out the vote. And here at Cleaning for Kids, we'll never tell you who to vote for. We'll just bring you the information and you can make your own decision. So Leanna, would you like to share a little bit about that? I hope your connection is stable. Your connection earlier was not stable. I'm worried that you're actually not. You got booted off because of your connection. I'm so sorry. No. Well, I will just say that, yes, that Leanna has that information about get out the vote. We need to make sure to that we have information on where to vote, and to tell our parents and our friends and our neighbors to please use the power of the vote. So we definitely need changes in our country. Also, next time, Leanna will be sharing and talking about the Green New Deal. So the Green New Deal has the opportunity to bring back millions of jobs in clean energy, great jobs. And so this is really important. And she'll compare the Green New Deal to Biden's plan. I think he's just calling it the Biden plan, both of which will put this country in a great place again with putting people back to work in renewable energy. So Janice, would you like to close us out here for tonight?
Yes, I would. So I'd like to thank everyone for attending, and I hope that everyone stays safe during this time and practice social distancing and self-quarantine if needed to help protect yourselves and others. However, while you are staying home and being safe and social distancing, you can visit cleanerforkids.org and take a look at our website and look at all of our 6 teams to find more information that might not have been mentioned in this panel discussion. And while you're at our website, make sure to take a look at our petitions, resources, information, contests, challenges, and community service and internship opportunities. All information on cleanerforkids.org is free for others to use because we want to be a hub of information that you can trust and also share to the world. If you missed a webinar, just know we record each one and post them on our YouTube channel, Cleaner for Kids, along with informational videos. So make sure you subscribe to get notifications to stay informed. Also check out our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where we post, retweet, and inform whenever we can. If you'd like to stay on the call with the current panelists that stay on, you can ask them questions, or we can just be informed by your knowledge. For those hopping off the call, we hope you have a great night, and we hope to see you next Thursday.